Welcome to our second part of a life experience with Jesus. Our scripture, Mark chapter 4, verse 34 to 41. I read. But without a parable spake he not unto them. And when they were alone, he expounded all things to his disciples. And the same day, when the even was come, he said unto them, Let us pass over unto the other side. And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship, and there were also with him other little ships. And there rose a great storm of wind, and the waves hit into the ship, so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him, and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are ye so fearful? How is it that ye have no faith? And they feared exceedingly, and said one to another, What manner of a man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? This is Jesus talking to his disciples. An experience of life with Jesus. An experience that we see Jesus after preaching and after teaching his disciples. He lived with them. He took them on a journey and experienced the things he was teaching them. After preaching for the whole day, and in the evening, he said to his disciples, Let us cross over to the other side. And as they were in the ship, the storm arose. As we are also living in our lives, we have accepted Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior, yes. We have been receiving teaching of the Word, yes. Jesus will also want us to go into our homes, where we are surviving, where we are facing situations, where we are meeting the storms of life. And he wants us to live that same word he has been preaching, he has been teaching us. On this second part, we are learning also another aspect which is important in life as we move with Jesus. Today I want to look at prayer. How to pray. We see when the disciples of Jesus were in the boat and the storm was hitting on them, fear filled their hearts. And they thought of approaching Jesus. They thought of calling help from Jesus, as we are also doing each and every time in our lives. Situations are arising. Storms of life are rising and they are hitting hard on our lives. And we see people calling, spending all night prayers, calling Jesus, calling on him to come and vindicate in their situation. The same situation we, the disciples of Jesus Christ, experienced. But in this scenario, we see that it was not just calling on Jesus. It matters how you call on Jesus. It matters how you call on Jesus. From what we have learned, this is how the disciples call help from Jesus. On verse 8, on Mark chapter 4, verse 8, the Bible says this is the kind of prayer. They said, Master, carest thou not that we perish? That's how they approached Jesus. That's how they were praying and calling for Jesus to come and help them in their situation. That kind of prayer, if you look into it closely, you will realize that there are a lot of things in that prayer. The first thing that we see is this was not just an ordinary prayer. This was a prayer of people who were full of fear. They had tried everything else in their own power, in their own ability. We know the great number of the disciples were fishermen of themselves. They had experience of the water and the storms and the waves. So they used their experience, they used their ability, they used their knowledge to try and sustain the storm. But they failed. Later on, they thought of calling help from Jesus, who was asleep in the boat. Many times, we use our own strength, we use our own intelligence, our own ability to try to calm the storms of life. After we have failed, after our account, after our pocket, after our salaries, after our own intelligence and experiences, when all those things fail, that is the moment many people come to Jesus to seek help, to pray, to call Jesus to come and vindicate in their lives, which is a wrong attitude in prayer. Jesus, the disciples waited until their strength, their ability was finished. Then they go to Jesus to call for help. Let me say this, ladies and gentlemen. Do not wait until you have exhausted your ability. Do not wait until you have exhausted your strength. You must start with Jesus. Start with faith. Go through the situation in the life and everything. Go through with faith. And cross over and get to the other side by faith. You should not start by yourself. You face storms and you try to solve them by yourself. Then after failing, that's when you call on Jesus. That is the wrong attitude of a Christian. It is not an issue. We don't call Jesus because we are desperate. Prayer is not a thing of desperate people. Prayer is not done by people who have tried everything and have failed. We must pray in the beginning. We must continue praying even in the middle of the storm. And we should continue praying up to the end. Fear must not be the motivation of our prayer. You know, the moment you use your strength to do things, to sustain your life, to calm storms of life, you have faith in your own ability. But the moment you fail, something takes over, which is called fear. Where you had put your trust and your hope that things are going to be okay, all means that you had before the table are failing. The moment you come to realize that I have failed, fear begins to take over. Now, if you go in prayer after all your means have failed, that means you are going there with fear. You are now afraid that something is going to happen. If I don't call for help, something is going to happen. That is fear. Just begin with faith. Begin with the prayer of faith. Start with faith. Manage every system of life by faith. And reach the end through faith. The prayer of faith must begin. The prayer of faith must sustain you. The prayer of faith must take you to the other side. The second thing that we can learn here concerning prayer is an attitude which we find in the words, Master, carest thou not that we perish? In those words, you can sense an attitude of condemning. A condemning attitude was in those words. It looks like a question. When you look at it, it's like a question, but they were not asking him. They were calling for help in a form of a question. So you sense an attitude of condemning. How could Jesus sleep when we are in such a storm? How could you not just come and intervene when we are in such a situation? They were expecting Jesus to do something, and Jesus was not doing it according to their expectations. Therefore, they condemned him. They asked for his help with a condemning attitude. With a condemning attitude. Why are you not doing this? let me say this, ladies and gentlemen. In your prayer, never question the person of Jesus, because he did not do as you expect. Jesus is not identified by our expectations. His person is the same. Whether he does or he doesn't intervene in your situation, never condemn him for your situations. A lot of people, when they pray, they call, why me, Lord? Why are you allowing things to happen like this? Why are things happening like this? They are pouring Jesus questions of condemning, as if Jesus is failing or is neglecting. His care is being questioned in prayer. His attitude, his person is ever the same. He's the same today, tomorrow, yesterday. He does not change. Whether he does it or he doesn't do it, he still cares. The third thing we learn here is don't call Jesus to do the obvious, to do the things that anyone else, a human being, can do. The disciples, we see them calling on Jesus to come and help them. They saw an extra hand. They saw another man who was in the boat, who had the ability to do exactly what they were doing, so that he can give help to sustain the storm. But this man they were calling Jesus is not a mere man like we know. He's a God. He had not sharing the same fear they were sharing. All they were calling from Jesus said, come and be part of us. Come and begin to do the things that we are doing. Come and scoop the water the way we are doing, so that we cannot drown. They were calling Jesus. In other words, they wanted to recruit Jesus to become maybe the 13th person to help in scooping the water from the boat. So when you pray, you should not pray like the disciples. You should not call on Jesus like his disciples. Because after calling on Jesus, Jesus woke up and rebuked the storm. He never did what they were expecting. He did not scoop the water the way they were doing. But he went on to command the storm. So when you call on Jesus, you don't call him to come and become the second person with you against the situation. You don't call him to become your partner against the situation, or against your wife, or against your husband, who is a problem in your house. But when you call on Jesus, call on him so that when he comes to vindicate in your situation, he vindicates like God. He vindicates not like a man, but he intervenes as God. He intervenes as someone of high authority. Remember, his judgment and his conclusion, his interpretation of your situation is different from your interpretation. You are afraid, he is not afraid. Because he knows that he has got power. His ways of dealing with the situation is not your ways of dealing with the situation. So when we call on Jesus, we must understand that when he intervenes, he is going to intervene as God. He is going to intervene in our situation as God. The disciples were shocked. Later on, the Bible says, when they see that the storm, even the wind, is obeying him, they were full of fear. That means, in the first place, they were not expecting Jesus to intervene the way he intervened. A lot of people are pressing on Jesus, praying, so that he can do the obvious things that other people are doing. Pressing on Jesus to do the obvious things that they can do themselves. They are just pressing on Jesus for an extra hand, for a little help. Let me say this. When Jesus intervenes, he will never intervene like a man. When Jesus comes into your life, he will never come to be like yourself. Jesus refused to be recruited by his disciples. He never scooped the water like his disciples. That's the reason why a lot of people say God is not answering our prayers. Let me say, God will never intervene in your situation the way you are thinking. For you are thinking like a man, and he is not a man. The way you think is the solution. The kind of solution you are thinking over your situation is not the solution that Jesus sees and thinks about. But his intervention is better. His ways of dealing with your situation is better. So when you pray, you must put on that attitude of saying, I am calling on the higher authority. I am calling on Jesus, who is able to do mightier, greater things. Who is able to intervene in anything. Expect miracles. Expect great things to happen when you pray. The first thing that we learn here is Jesus here is being called from a sleep. They are calling Jesus from a sleep. Jesus was asleep. They are calling him, come and intervene. Carest him thou, Master, carest thou, not that we perish. I know one moment in time, I've been awakened from sleep. I was resting, and being awakened from a sleep, there is that annoying feeling. When you awaken someone from a sleep, you must awaken a person for something that is important. When someone is resting, and you think of awakening him, it has to be something that is of value. Otherwise, he is not going to deal with you nicely. If you look at how Jesus responded to his disciples when they awakened him, Lord, carest thou that carest not that we are perishing. When Jesus woke up, he never discussed anything. He went straight to the storm, commanded it to be calm. And he left them two questions. Why is it that you have no faith? Why is it that you are full of fear? There was nothing nice about his speech. He never thanked them for waking him up. A lot of us are praying, pressing on Jesus, on issues Jesus is quiet about. And we wonder why Jesus is not calling, why Jesus is not responding. Why Jesus is not responding. Let me say this. Jesus had taught his disciples how to deal, how to use faith, how to pray. And he was expecting them to exercise their faith. He was expecting them to do something, to use what he had taught them, so that in dealing with this situation. But here we see his disciples going back to Jesus again, calling on him, Lord, carest thou not that we perish? In other words, Jesus knew he had given everything, every resource, every knowledge of how to deal with the situation to his disciples. He had given them all the knowledge, but they did not use it. They praised on him despite the fact that he had taught them. It's like a student who has been taught by his teacher, and later on is given an exercise, a test, an assignment to do. But instead of using the knowledge and the teaching that he has learned, he has been given by the teacher, he goes back to the teacher, knock on his door when the teacher is asleep, and ask for questions of the same assignment. Annoying. How annoying are our prayers when we go and praise on Jesus, when we are failing to execute exactly what he had taught us, to put in practice what he had taught us. He's teaching us his word. But instead of putting into practice his word, we are pressing on him with those same issues, pressing for answers of the things we are learning every day. We are pressing on Jesus, on the things we were equipped by Him to handle and to do. Prayer. A prayer of a person who is lazy to practice that which he has learned is an annoying prayer. The prayer of a person who is afraid to put into practice the things he has learned. Annoying prayer. It's better to be afraid but putting into practice what you have learned. The disciples forgot everything that Jesus taught them. And they started to do like mere men, mere fishermen. And when they could not manage it, they pressed on Jesus. But Jesus had taught them a lot of things. My question is, how many things have you been taught? And are you not coming again and again, day and night, fasting and praying for the same things? You cannot press on Jesus to give you the answer of the things He had taught you to solve for yourself. Annoying prayer. Prayer cannot substitute faith. You cannot substitute where you need to practice the word. And you just say, why should I pray? Why should I do giving? Why should I do this? What the Bible teaches me. I should just pray and God will give me. Annoying prayer. We should learn to put the things we have learned in practice. So we can pray, we can move on. We can show that we are learning, we are progressing. We have to pass all the tests of life. It is better to venture into the unknown with faith than to pray for things you should be doing for yourself. It's better to venture into the unknown. It's better to exercise the word of God in the way that I have never done before, rather than just forgetting everything and begin to pray. You are supposed to have faith, to use your faith, not to pray. It was given to you already. Why should you nag on Jesus, praying and think that Jesus Christ is not answering our prayers? Yes, He calmed the storm. Yes, He did the miracle. But watch out the way you pray. So, today we have just learned that there is an attitude we must put on as we come before the Lord to pray. The case study, the life experience of Jesus and His disciples must help you to create a good attitude when you go before the Lord to pray. Thank you. May God bless you. Kama kusaita